Just because you may have been evaluated and approved to join the list of suppliers on that system, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to receive work or any income. Not every tender is ideal for your business. Not every tender is ideal for your business. Yes, tenders allow us to scale and grow our businesses because it gives us that predictable and sustainable income directly from the government, which is perfect for almost every single business in every single sector. However, just because you see a tender for your business, which your business can supply, does not mean it is good for you. And here's why. Tenders come in different forms. One of the main forms and types of tenders is called a DPS. So you need to pay attention to the type of tender that is being published or advertised by your local authority or the buyer in question. In a DPS, essentially what a DPS is first is an abbreviation for Dynamic Purchasing System. It could also be called a DPV, which is a Dynamic Purchasing Vehicle, or an FPS, which is a Flexible Purchasing System. But essentially, there are two main characteristics that make it different from the other types of tenders, which again, I'm going to do videos about in the future weeks. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel because you need to understand the different types of tenders and the ones that are most appropriate for your business. A DPS. First characteristic of a DPS, it stays open for the duration of time that the government or the buyer need that service for. Now, before they've published a tender, meaning being the buyer, in this example, let's say local authority, before they've published a tender for home care services, they've established a budget, and that budget they've also established a time frame that budget can accommodate or sustain the demand for the services for. In this example again, home care from this specific local authority A. In that tender, there's going to be a starting date, but also an end date, being 2026, running up until 2033. So when I say it stays open for the duration of the time, it's because with the other types of tenders, majority of them, there's going to be a deadline where suppliers need to submit their bids by, which means that if it goes past that deadline, you can no longer bid to join the tender or to join the framework. So with a DPS, one of the key criteria and characteristics of a DPS is that it allows suppliers to submit their bids at any point in time throughout the period of time the tender is going to be established for, or however long the buyer in question, the local authority in question, has determined they need to continuously procure services for. Second characteristic of a DPS, as opposed to the other types of tenders, within a DPS, just because you may have been evaluated and approved to join the list of suppliers on that system, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to receive work or any income. The second main characteristic is that within a DPS, there will also be mini competitions. So again, using the home care example with local authority A, assuming local authority A has a package, let's call it an individual that needs care, then publish individual needs to the suppliers on that system. However, it doesn't mean that they're going to give or guarantee work for all the suppliers, but the point of a mini competition is that the relevant or the interested suppliers will have to bid to get the work. Now, mini competition can take different forms. It can be pricing related, which means that they will simply give it to the lowest bidder in the sense of pricing. So the person or the company that offers the council the cheapest hourly rates, which means that again, the council saves money, but at the same time, because they've already approved you and determined that your business can deliver the services, they do not need to necessarily worry about the quality of care you're going to deliver at that point. That's an example of a mini competition, but like I said, they can take different forms depending on the tender and the local authority. Another form could also be, as well as the pricing, they may even ask a few questions to determine or understand how you are going to deliver the care to that individual exactly as they need it, to make sure it's high standard, high quality, person-centered care. So they might have a few questions, and based on the responses, based on the rate, they would then select the appropriate supplier. So those are two main characteristics you need to understand. Based on that, you can understand if your business should be going for this tender or that tender, or potentially you need to prioritize a different type of tender. Again, if you've got any questions or you need to understand what other types of tenders there are, I'm going to be publishing videos over the coming week breaking this down, but do not just bid on any tender just because it's a tender. There are advantages and disadvantages to all types of tenders. So I'm going to go through 2 disadvantages and 2 advantages. And we're going to summarize by my recommendation. Again, do your own due diligence. You will know what's best for your business. But my recommendation of who should be going for DPSs and why. First disadvantage to a DPS, like I said, because it stays open, allowing for multiple providers to apply to join at any time. What does that usually entail? It means there's always going to be potentially a lot of suppliers, which means if there are a lot of suppliers, the supply and demand begins to be dysfunctional in terms of supply becomes higher than the demand. There's more competition, there's more suppliers there that you need to compete with to get work. So just simply having a lot of suppliers, which again, like I said, it stays open, so they're adding more and more and more. Next year there might be more, the year after there might be more, which reduces your chances of getting work from that tender. You're not just bidding on a tender to just say you've won a tender or you're on a tender. You're bidding so you can get work from that tender and grow your business. So bear this in mind, that if it's a DPS, there will be more and more suppliers. If it's already been running before you made a bid on it, you're joining the list of potentially a plethora of suppliers. But even afterwards, potentially again another plethora or a growing list of suppliers. The second disadvantage ties in with the first, but because of the mini competition, it potentially will continuously drive the price lower and lower and lower, which means that not only is there more competition, but the pure size of competition makes DPSs less consistent or less reliable if you're relying on that DPS for a sustainable, predictable income for your business, because you're always going to be dealing with pricing, or even if it's not a pricing competition, there's not a guarantee that you're going to get work this month or the next month or the next 6 months, because you always have to continuously keep bidding, trying in hope to win that package. So the second disadvantage is you cannot build a predictable and sustainable income for your business from that DPS. So disadvantage 1, more competition. Disadvantage 2, because there's more competition, there is infrequent income stream for your business. 2 advantages. It's not all doom and gloom, but there are advantages to a DPS as well. The first is that because it stays open, you being a new business, if you're just coming into that particular sector, or you already operate that business, but you would like to expand into a different market or geography in the country, it allows you time to bid for that tender. So with a lot of people, a lot of agencies, you might just have got your, for example, CQC registration, using CQC for home care in this case. But by the time you got your CQC registration within that particular local borough, the tender may have come and gone, which means that you might have to wait 2, 3, 4 years to bid to join a tender for domiciliary care. But if it's an area with a DPS open, you know you've got the favor of time, so you can build your business accordingly.